From the contested region of northeastern India, it's a relatively short journey to Kathmandu, where we'll find applied linguist Krishna Sharma, who has been working as an assistant professor in the English department at the University of Idaho since 2016. Although he completed his PhD at the University of Hawaii, Bal actually grew up in the mountain village in Nepal, where he became fascinated with the interactions between foreign trekkers and climbers and their Nepali guides and Sherpas. His current research focuses on the foreign language signage in the Tamil neighborhood of Kathmandu, a tourist hub where Bal sees in the Nepali, English, and Chinese language signs the future of global tourism. The very nature of our human identity, our sense of being insiders or outsiders, is revealed in the languages used for signs on our city streets. So please welcome Bal.
Thank you, and this is a good connection between two speakers because my hometown and these animals' hometowns, that's the same place. We come from the same place. And thank you again, and this is an outcome of my academic research that's going on for the last 10 or so years in tourism and the role of language in international tourism. And I developed my interest in tourism because I grew up in a very touristy area in the western part of Nepal, and that was a very popular trekking destination. And then tourists frequently stopped on the way, and that's my village and my grandmother in between myself and my younger brother. And there's an elementary school in the background, and the trail behind me was a trekking trail. And I grew a fascination toward tourism because when I saw these tourism workers like porters and trekking guides working for tourists, I thought they were very privileged because they spoke English, and then they had the opportunity to socialize with Western tourists. And this is exactly when I decided to know more information about tourism. And then I chose my dissertation topic in tourism and the role of language in tourism. And for this presentation, I'm focusing on public signage, multilingual signage in a place called Tamil in Kathmandu. Tamil is a tourist hub that has restaurants, hotels, and shops for international tourists. And for today's talk, I'm focusing on specific part of that tourist enclave where we can see a growing rate and exponential growth of Chinese goods and languages there. And I argue that the global spread of English is giving rise to the commodification of language and culture, and this is a very key characteristic society of a transnational and post-capitalist era. Tamil grew as a popular tourist destination in 1960s and 70s. Western hippies traveled to Kathmandu to get marijuana and hashish for free. And with the arrival of Chinese tourists in recent years, there is more Chinese these days. You see Mandarin and Cantonese scripts, Chinese food, and lanterns on the streets and inside the stores. And part of the enclave has been developed with all those Chinese signs, and this is also known as the Chinatown of Nepal. And you can see that in local shopkeepers and other people are taking benefits of those linguistic signage and the changes in order to sell their items to outside tourists, mainly Chinese. So those who can read Chinese, this gives information about stores and items, and those who cannot read, this represents some kind of Chinaness or exotic Chinese identity. And for local people, these are ornaments or cultural objects to attach to other commodities and sell to outside tourists. And most shopkeepers do not speak Chinese, nor do the artists who draw these signs. And I asked a tourist whether he could speak Chinese, but he did not, and look at the response there. And they took help of Google translators, and they also asked their customers to write some text for them, and they would attach those signs to different objects and outside the stores and inside the stores. And its implications for other tourist languages like Japanese and Korean, these languages have been less popular in the recent years. And the local language, which is called Newari, that's the local indigenous language of the Kathmandu Valley, has been displaced, and you don't see really those Newari signs these days. And let's go inside the stores and see what kinds of signs you can see there. The signs speak to you, and there's a strong rapport between the speaker and the customers. And they draw on popular Chinese slangs and internet language and mostly the youth language there. And let's move to another sign and see the picture. The girl flew all the way from China to Nepal to buy a scarf, and she is riding on a scarf there. Is similar to those flying carpets that are found in Disney movies these days and also in ancient Chinese tales. And I talked to several Chinese-speaking friends, and they agree that these are very new literacy practices they have not seen before. And various studies in the past have reported that Chinese are very patriotic, and they are more patriotic when they go outside the country. And you can see those patriotism in those signs as well. And I asked the shopkeeper if he could understand the sign. He did not. And Diaoyu Islands have been a source of controversy, political controversy between Japan and China for some time. And this sign goes to those objects. And I also was interested in whether the shopkeeper understood what the sign meant, but he did not again. All they wanted to do was to sell the item to the outsiders. So let's come back to the general question of what this all means for the study of language and tourism in societies where the use of language is a new phenomenon. So in less capitalist societies where the commodification of language and culture has been one of the key features of these societies, this changing linguistic signage and the symbols have been creating what can be called tourist bubbles. Means Chinese tourists come to Nepal, and they're all linguistic signage, and then hotel staff speak Chinese, and they travel in Chinese airlines that make announcements in Chinese and distribute newspapers in Chinese, and they take part in those group tours where they have Chinese-speaking tour guide. And these bubbles arguably create barriers for these visitors to experience cultural differences. And this means when we study the global spread of Chinese, it shows the global rising power of China in the world level through those linguistic signs, and also the Chinese language. And at the same time, these signs also indicate that they are the tools and sources of marginalization for other local languages and tourist languages. So this also helps us to conceptualize tourism in a new way. While Western tourism was based on cultural authenticity and self-discovery, Chinese tourism is more based on commodification of the objects and consuming these objects through shopping. Thank you for listening to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob, very much.
Sure, thanks.